This is Ifama Odolami from the Odolami Law Firm. I have a few minutes and I want to come in and go over a topic that always generates a lot of interest. That topic is preparing for your marriage interview. So, for those who don't know me, my name is Ifama Odolami. My law firm is in New Jersey, but we serve clients from all 50 states. And at the Odolami Law Firm, we work to assist fellow immigrants in getting their American dream, be it getting a green card or naturalizing or getting their family members over to the United States. So this is going to be a quick one, but I just want to go over some of the things you need to know if you're going for a marriage interview. Now, typically, you have a U.S. citizen or green card holder filing for their spouse. The U.S. citizen or the green card holder is known as the petitioner. Then the beneficiary is the person, the intended immigrant. So to prepare for an interview, there's certain things you need to know. For starters, I always recommend that my clients get to the field office at least 45 minutes before the time of the interview, because sometimes, even though the interview notice will say don't get there before 30 minutes, but sometimes the line is really long. So you want to make sure that you get there at least 45 minutes, and so that if there's a long line, it doesn't affect your ability to be timely for your interview. So another thing is, when you're going for the interview, you want to dress business casual, I'd say. Dress nicely, but don't overdress. Dress like you're going to a nice restaurant, something like that, right? And then you want to bring all your documents, originals of all documents that you submitted. Now, certain documents such as your birth certificate, marriage certificate, passport, when your lawyer submits this, they submit copies. So when you're coming to the interview, you want to bring all originals of all your documents. You want to bring your identifying information, things that identify you. You also want to bring a copy of the interview letter, because they will ask you for that when you get to the door. Now, having said that, a lot of people think that because they've been married for a long time, or they've been with each other for a long time, that they don't need to prepare for a marriage interview. That is so wrong. You really need to prepare for your marriage interview. And the reason is because sometimes, people's perceptions about a certain question may be different. So you want you and your spouse to be on the same page, because being off by one question sometimes can color the whole interview. You'll have an officer who thinks that because both of you gave a different answer to a question, that it might mean that it's not a real relationship. And you have to remember, the burden of proving that it's a real marriage lies on the person who's trying to come into the United States, you and your spouse, who's trying to get their green card, you and your spouse. So you have to put your best foot forward. So what I'm going to advise is, you want to sit down with your spouse, go over certain questions, and some of those questions I'm going to go into them here, so that everybody is on the same page with regards to when things happened. Now, sometimes there's some offices that will do what we call the Stokes interview, which means as soon as you get in there, they separate the couple and they'll ask them the same questions, but in different rooms to see if their answers tally. Sometimes they will question you together, and then they'll question you together, and if they feel there's inconsistencies, then they will do a Stokes interview. Depends on how the officer wants to run the interview. But the important thing for you to do is to make sure you come prepared, come with your documents. And if anything has changed since the filing, for instance, if you have a house now, you want to bring copies of the mortgage. If you've moved to a new place, you want to bring the new lease agreement. If you've had children, you want to bring their birth certificates. Don't bring the children. Another thing is, you might also want to bring all the things you submitted before, but updated, like updated utility bills, that kind of stuff. So you want to come, with all of that information. You want to also come with updated pictures. showing that you're still together and everything's still going great. And I always ask that you bring pictures that show a snapshot of your life, pictures of you guys with family members, with friends, that kind of stuff, as opposed to just pictures of you and your spouse alone. Now, how does the questioning go? Typically, I would break it into two parts. The first part of the questioning is when they go over the forms that you've submitted. For the petitioner is the I-130 and the I-864. For the beneficiary, it's the I-485, the I-765, the I-131, and they'll ask you questions about that. A lot of times they want to ask questions about immigration history. And when I mention this, I want to let you know that if you applied, prior immigration applications, will come into play. So sometimes you might have put something in an application when you came in, and they may ask you about that, So sometimes you might have put that you were engaged when you came in, when you filled out the DS-160, which is what you fill out when you're applying to come into the United States as a visitor. They would look into that and ask you about that. It's all fair game, right? So your immigration history is fair game. They will ask you security questions. Security questions such as, you might find them amusing because, they're asking you, are you a terrorist and all that? But it's not amusing. This is serious business. So you want to take it seriously and answer the questions. If there's a question you do not understand, because some of the terms might be terms you're not familiar with, such as espionage or that kind of question, and you're not sure what it means, you should ask the officer. And that's why it's important for you to go through your forms before you come for the interview, so that you get a chance to Google the words that you're not familiar with. And so they'll ask you questions about the application, what's on your application, the jobs you've had in the past 5 years, the addresses you've lived in the past 5 years, your family members, who lives where, that kind of where you lived at certain parts, certain times. They ask you all of those questions. Now, the second questions that they'll ask you is questions regarding your relationship. And that's really the important part, I say, of the interview. I mean, they're all important, but really this is the part that makes people nervous, because they, a lot of times they may ask you questions and you're not sure of the answer, and then you give an answer that you think is what they want you to answer or what will make you look good. So this is where I caution my clients that be honest. If they ask you a question and, they may ask you a question, what did you give your spouse for Christmas? If you didn't give your spouse anything for Christmas, be honest. Don't say something because it looks like this will make us look more, look like we're a real relationship. Now, USCIS is always very interested in how you met. And that is one area that I find that there's a lot of, if you don't prepare for the interview, people give different answers, especially in today's, today that, dating is, you could meet through a dating group. And one spouse may feel that the day you met, the day you signed on, the day you start chatting is the day you met. And another person might feel it's the day you met in person. So you and your spouse want to actually have a conversation so that you can decide, when do you agree is the day you met? Was it the day you met online, or the date you met in person, or was it the first date you had? So those are important things that you want to clarify before you go for the interview. Now, USCIS is always very interested also about, the dating relationship. How did you, who proposed to who, and how did the proposal go? Why did you, how did you decide to get married? Where did you get married? Who came for the wedding? Did you have some kind of celebration after the wedding? Who was there? So those are things that you want to, talk to your spouse about. And regarding that wedding, funny enough, people also have different answers. Like, you might have people who did a registry wedding with the intention of, doing a more, I guess, another wedding where they're family members. And one party thinks the registry wedding is the date of the wedding. Another person thinks that it's the date where you had the wedding and families and friends were there. Like in my culture in Nigeria, we have a traditional wedding, we have the church wedding, and sometimes you do the registry because you want to get that out of the way. So the wedding is the date your wedding certificate says you got married. So everybody should agree on that, okay? Now, USCIS also wants to know about your family. You know, typically they'll ask questions about your siblings, where they live. If your spouse has children, they want to know if you know the names of your stepchildren. And I've heard of people who go for the interview and can't even pronounce the names of their stepchildren. So learn how to pronounce it if it's something that you're not familiar with, or maybe you don't have a relationship with the stepchildren, but you should know how to pronounce it, because those are the things that give USCIS the impression that it's not a real relationship. So you really want to know how many siblings your spouse has, the names of their children, how many times your spouse has been married. That also gets a little traction, because some spouses do not want to tell their spouses how many times they've been married. So you go there thinking your spouse has only been married twice, but he's actually been married 4 times, or vice versa. Could be the wife, not the husband. So it's a come to Jesus moment where you want to know exactly how many times they've been legally married. Of course, without, I don't need to say that you have to have all the divorce decrees from all these marriages, because if there's no divorce decree, the present marriage is void. Now, USCIS will also want to know about your daily habits. You and your spouse, who gets up first, what's your, where you work, what your hours are at work, when you take off from work. And they want to know, they will ask questions about where you live. Sometimes they'll ask you to draw a diagram regarding, where things are placed in an apartment or in a house or in a bedroom. They could ask you questions like, what side of the bed you typically sleep on, what else is in the bedroom, that kind of stuff. So you want to actually prep yourself for some of these questions that usually get asked. There's some questions that you can't anticipate, because the officer will follow the lead of your answers, and sometimes will ask questions that are not typical. So, but you help yourself when you and your spouse actually do a proper prep before an interview. This is so important. In my office, every marriage interview, we have a prep where we ask the husband questions, the wife or wives, husbands, the couple. We ask them questions about the relationship, and funny enough, sometimes the answers are so different, and then you understand why they're different because of perspective. So it's a good idea to have you and your spouse on the same page with regards to these questions. Now, another thing that USCIS likes to ask questions about are holidays, birthdays. What did you do? How did you spend it? If it's birthdays or Christmas or whatever, what gifts did you share? So these are the things that you need to know so that you can ace your interview. And I always say this: if you ask a question and you're not sure what the question means, like you don't understand the question, please ask the officer to reframe the question or indicate you do not understand the question. There's no need to be nervous or answer a question that you think they're asking, because honestly, the mood at the interview is such that if you get certain questions wrong, it could give the wrong impression. It could give the impression that it's not a genuine relationship. So that's all I have for today. And if you're filing for a family member or you have any other immigration issue, please feel free to call my office at 973-993-1900.